Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a trip back to the fog-drenched, gas-lit streets of 1888 Victorian London. We're going to untangle the whole Jack the Ripper myth from the actual facts. Specifically, we're looking at those wild conspiracy theories that link the murders to the Freemasons. We'll explore exactly how much of this infamous tale is grounded in historical and scientific evidence, and how much is really just a glittering, sensationalized Hollywood dream. So, let's dive right into this. What if history's absolute greatest unsolved murder spree was actually a massive, elite cover-up? It's a glamorous, seductive, and highly mysterious Masonic conspiracy theory that has honestly captivated audiences for decades. But before we tear this elaborate fiction apart piece by piece, we really need to understand exactly how the narrative evolved and why this cinematic lie holds such incredible power over our imaginations. Part 1. Shadows of Whitechapel, the Autumn of Terror. Before we get totally swept up in Hollywood's shiny scripts, let's ground ourselves in the cold, harsh reality of what actually happened. Because in the terrifying autumn of 1888, over a span of just a few short weeks, 5 ordinary women were brutally murdered in London's impoverished East End district of Whitechapel. We're talking about Nichols, Chapman, Stride, Eddowes, and Kelly. We absolutely must remember these names. These were real people fighting to survive in deep, deep poverty and desperation. The true historical tragedy here is the systematic elimination of these highly vulnerable women. Which brings us to part 2, Hollywood's Masonic conspiracy. Enter the elite. Let's look at how this narrative dramatically shifted, how the real victims were kind of pushed aside, and pop culture turned a gritty tragedy into this sensationalized fairy tale. So how exactly did true crime evolve into a blockbuster franchise featuring Sherlock Holmes and A-list celebrities? Well, it was really ignited by Stephen Knight's 1976 book. The conspiracy theory quickly gathered steam and completely peaked on the big screen. We saw it in 1978's Murder by Decree and later in the 2001 mega hit From Hell. The story literally mutated from a local murder investigation into a massive international top-down thriller. Films like From Hell present this deeply captivating narrative, right? Sir William Gull, Queen Victoria's own physician and a prominent Freemason, allegedly slaughtered witnesses in the back of a carriage just to cover up Prince Eddie's scandalous marriage. Hollywood drilled this idea into our heads that the entire government, the police force, basically everyone, was a vast Masonic brotherhood working together to protect the royals. I mean, honestly, it sounds like the perfect script. Part 3, The Anatomy of a Hoax. Let's see how this all builds, because now we're digging straight into the origins of this massive fabrication. And really, the creation process is a true crime story in itself. Author Stephen Knight built his twisted, best-selling narrative based entirely on just one single source, a man named Joseph Sickert. Here are the steps of their supposed elite plot. Step 1, Prince Eddie secretly marries Annie Crook, a Catholic commoner. Step 2, a royal child is born out of wedlock. Step 3, to prevent a huge scandal, the Prime Minister orders Masonic assassins to eliminate the local prostitutes who knew about the marriage, all to protect the monarchy. It's a logical ticking clock of a conspiracy. Well, that is, until the truth finally came out. And wow, did Joseph Sickert drop an absolute bombshell. Speaking to the Sunday Times in 1978, the sole source of this billion-dollar Hollywood myth completely destroyed it with just one sentence. He said, "It was a hoax. I made it all up." Can you even imagine? All those books, the massive movies, the widespread anti-Masonic prejudice that followed, all of it entirely based on a fabricated fairy tale from a man who openly admitted he was lying. All right, part 4, historical and scientific evidence, dismantling the myth. Now that we've heard the actual confession of the hoax, let's turn to the historians and the scientific evidence to systematically crush these cinematic claims. See, Hollywood paints the royal physician, Dr. Gull, as this agile, masterful assassin, butchering victims in the back of a carriage. But the historical reality? Dr. Gull was 72 years old and actively recovering from a really debilitating stroke. Physically lugging bodies around the East End was scientifically and physically impossible for him. And Prince Eddie, the guy he was supposedly covering for, he was 400 miles away in Germany during several of the murders. Then there's the core motive itself. The films claim Queen Victoria absolutely needed these brutal murders to stop a scandalous marriage from ruining the throne. But historically, the Royal Marriages Act of 1772 allowed the Queen to instantly annul literally any unapproved marriage with a single signature. The entire bloody cinematic motive has absolutely zero legal foundation. A simple, bureaucratic stroke of a pen would have solved the whole problem. No elite assassins required. Conspiracy theorists also absolutely love the word Jews, famously found written in chalk near one of the victims. Films confidently claim it's a secret Masonic code word for 3 assassins. But the historical record shows that back in 1888, English Masonic rituals never used such a word. They called their allegorical assassins the 3 ruffians. So Jews was never a Masonic term to begin with. So why did Police Chief Sir Charles Warren, who actually was a Freemason, hastily erase that chalk graffiti? Was he covering for his secret brotherhood? Not at all. As he clearly stated in his own official reports, anti-Semitic tensions in the area were already at a total boiling point. Warren erased the message to prevent a deadly, riotous onslaught against completely innocent Jewish citizens living in Whitechapel. And let's look at the modern science on this. An official 1988 FBI behavioral profile completely contradicts the Hollywood myth. A wealthy, noble, master surgeon moving silently through the night? Absolutely not. The FBI points to a white male, aged 28 to 36, a socially inept local loner with highly unsanitary habits and zero surgical skill. Jack the Ripper wasn't some sophisticated Masonic genius. He was just a pathetic, brutal local psychopath. Which brings us to Part 5, Cinema and Prejudice, the Cost of Fiction. Moving beyond just the historical debunking, we have to ask what happens when we willfully turn a real human tragedy into a sensationalized lie. We really have to ask ourselves, why are we so incredibly eager to believe the Masonic theory? Why is an elite aristocrat in a top hat and a velvet cape so much more appealing to our cultural imagination than an ordinary, unsanitary local butcher? Now, what's really fascinating here is how it all just comes down to human psychology. We are incredibly willing to suspend our critical thinking to wallow in misinformation that feeds our deeper biases. If the Ripper is just a low-class loner, well, that's depressing. But if it involves queens, princes, and secret societies, it perfectly satisfies our societal resentment and our inherent mistrust of the elite. It just feels like a grander story. But cinema's role in this is far from innocent. Filmmakers exploit these historical mysteries to make billions of dollars, willfully ignoring documented facts just for the sake of entertainment. And in the process, they don't just erase the true, heartbreaking stories of 5 innocent women, they actively and unfairly fuel real-world prejudice against actual organizations like the Freemasons. It's turning a historical tragedy into cheap, profitable fiction. Finally, Part 6, the enduring mystery, fact over fiction. As we wrap up this explainer, we arrive at the core truth of this whole chaotic narrative. So, the absolutely crucial point is this. The true horror of 1888 wasn't an elite cover-up orchestrated by royal doctors, prime ministers, or secret societies. The real, heartbreaking truth was much simpler and honestly much sadder. It was a lone, pathetic predator who brought cold terror to the streets, preying on desperate and highly vulnerable women who were really just trying to survive. So, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Are we simply too eager to trade the gritty, uncomfortable reality of history for a captivating cinematic lie just because it looks a little better on the silver screen?